Okay guys, so tonight we are going to show y'all how to tie this fly. I had somebody earlier today ask that I would show them how this fly was tied up. It's not a very complicated fly. Here it is right here. It is a variation on a fly pattern called the Grumpy Old Man. The Grumpy Old Man does not have a hackle tail on it. And instead of using clumps of craft fur like I did, it uses craft fur zonker strips. The guy actually goes through and makes zonker strips of craft fur. It's pretty neat. What he goes through and does is takes the pad of craft fur and he applies glue to the back of it, which toughens it up a little bit, and he can cut zonker strips out of it. That takes some extra prep work that I did not want to do, so I just tied it in clumps, which makes it a little bit more time consuming to tie, but I like the results. You can tie this fly literally any way that you wanted to. Let me get that a little bit closer so y'all can see. You could tie this fly literally any way that you wanted to. If you wanted to do a beige belly and a darker top, you could do this in a solid white. You could do it in white and gray for like a shad pattern, draw a couple dots. You could even put some different, you could put like a yellow stripe down here for like a threadfin shad, or you could go through and do just like this pattern but put some pink in here for like a rainbow trout pattern. It's really whatever you want to do with it, but it's a pretty neat articulated fly. Like I said, it's pretty simple to tie, so we're going to go ahead and give it a shot. Hopefully this will be easy for y'all to see and understand, and I'm going to do my best to explain what I'm doing while I'm doing it. So let's go ahead and do a material roll call. Firstly, you are going to need your thread. Today I am using olive. Oops, let me do this here. There we go. Okay, so I'm using olive. This is 210 denier. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's Danville. Normally I would not be using 210. You can do 140 with this, but I happen to be out right now, so we're going to go ahead and try the 210. You're going to be using two size 2 Gamakatsu B10S hooks. Other stinger hooks can be used. These are just what I happen to like the best. But you'll need two the same size. We're not doing two different size hooks for this. It's two Gamakatsu B10S. Coincidentally, if you wanted to go cheap on it, if you like the B10Ss but you don't have access to them, VMC makes a what's it called? It's a Nico hook, and the Nikos have the exact same bend, same wire diameter, same everything as the B10Ss. They're cheaper, they're easier to find. They do have a little bit of an offset hook, so you'd have to bend that straight, but it would work if you wanted it to. Next you're going to need Palmer chenille. This is pearl, focus, there we go. This is pearl Palmer chenille. This is what you're going to be using for the belly of the fly. You are going to need craft fur, obviously. We're going to go ahead and do the same olive pattern again. This is, I think it's the Hairline Extra Select. Whatever craft fur you like. You're going to need some Crystal Flash. You're going to need some hackle. This is actually I think it's a Wapsi bugger pack. One of the pads that they get you in the bugger pack. This has a lot of feathers in here that are honestly a little large for most of the buggers that I tie, so these work perfectly. And then you will need Sinyo's Laser Dub. So I have the olive here, and then I have the white there, and these have just enough, a little bit of a flash in them that it makes it nice. There's no weight added to this fly. It sinks a little bit on its own, but you could also use it on a sink tip or a full sink line. And so let's go ahead and give it a shot. Oh, another material I forgot to mention is you will need eyes. These are 10 millimeter 3D, I think, living eyes, and these are like the brown of the natural color. So we're going to go ahead and set our hook in our vise, like so. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and set that there. We are going to go ahead and tie in. We're going to start about the 50% point and tie back to the midway point between the hook point and the barb. And we will go ahead and trim that off. Hopefully you can see if I can zoom in a little bit. I'm shooting from my GoPro, so hopefully y'all can see this pretty well. Black shirt, black hook, makes it a little bit difficult to see. But, so there's that. We're going to go ahead and take our crystal flash, and I'm going to take 2 strands and pull them free. You don't need this anymore. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is even these guys up. And I'm going to go ahead and fold them in half. And we're going to go ahead and cut that in half. And there's your 4 equal strands of crystal flash. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and kind of separate them over the hook. Get the tips more or less even. And we're going to go ahead and tie this in. Let me see if I can get a little bit more light here. There we go. That's better. Sorry, my tying station's not exactly set up for videoing. So, you've got your hook here, you've got your crystal flash out here. So, we're going to go ahead and let the thread hang, and we're going to go ahead and take our hackle, and we're going to pick out 4 hackles that are roughly the same size. And I like to pick 2 a little bit thicker ones and 2 a little bit thinner ones. And we'll go ahead and use, if they're different lengths, it's okay, because we're going to go through and trim them anyway. But, so, got one here. And we'll go ahead and use this one here. And then we're going to go ahead and use, let's get a little thinner one here. Three, and we'll go ahead and do 4. So you don't need this anymore. Now that we have 4 hackles here, we've got 4 hackles, we're going to go ahead and take one, we're going to kind of measure it out to the hook. So this I want to be about half the fly length. So roughly for this size we're going to go ahead and do, it's not an exact science, it's cool. Roughly the same length as our crystal flash coming out the back. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to got that there. Need a little bit of extra room to tie in at, so I'm going to go ahead and snip this down. And just snip. And get rid of the excess. And what I'm going to do is go through and measure out all these hackles to where they're roughly the same length. You want them pretty close. They're going to be a little bit staggered when we tie them in, but go ahead and get them trimmed up now. And there's number 4. Alright. So now that we have 4 hackles that are the same length, now what we're going to do here is we're going to tie these guys in, and we're going to tie them in this way to where the feathers fold together, not where they're splayed out. So they're going to be folded in towards each other, not splayed. So we're going to go ahead and tie this one in. There. Yeah, go ahead and tie this guy in first. Okay, there's one. Make sure these guys are kind of evenly measured out. Apparently this guy got cut a little bit shorter than the other, so we'll try this one first. There we go. Okay, and we'll go ahead and come up here. 3. And 4. Okay, so now we have our hackle tied in, about the same length as our crystal flash. Next thing we're going to go ahead and do is run some super glue over the wraps here just to hold everything in place. And we will give that a second to set. Go ahead and Alright, so now we've got our thread wrapped back to the hackle here, and we're going to go ahead and take our Palmer Chanel, and we're going to find the end. There we go. And we are going to go ahead and tie that in. Wrap up to about the halfway point on the shank. And now we're going to go ahead and pull my bobbin holder around. And we're going to go ahead and start wrapping here. And when you're wrapping this, you want to go ahead and kind of slick these fibers back. So we're going to go wrap. Little trapped fiber there. I forget it. And you want to keep these wraps pretty close together because you want this to be fairly dense. And we will stop there. Go ahead and grab my thread and wrap this in. Do a couple wraps ahead. Okay, so we will pull this off to the side, and now you're going to need your gel super glue. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to kind of tuft this stuff down to the side. We're going to get everything kind of split right down the middle. And then you're going to take your super glue and you're going to run, I don't know if you can see this or not, just a little bit of super glue right there on the top of where you have this folded down. And you're going to go just use your finger and dab that down. Don't let your finger sit for too long or you will glue yourself to the fly. And now you see how it sits splayed down like that. I have a little bit more right here. Alright. So it's all splayed down now. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our craft fur and we're going to snip off a little patch. Okay, pull that away. So now you get your little clump of craft fur like that, and you're going to kind of brush out the under fur. I'm just going to do like this. You see all that under fur is coming out of my hand. I know I keep looking down. My phone is in my lap. The video is streaming to my phone right now, so I'm just kind of keeping an eye, making sure everything looks good. So you've got all that extra under fur, you get rid of that. This is just like getting the under fur out of deer hair when you're spinning deer. going to go through, you got all these long guard hairs here, we're going to go ahead and pull those guys out. So, now you're left with this nice little kind of neat lump of bucktail. We can go ahead and trim that. Or not bucktail, excuse me, craft fur. We're going to go ahead and trim that down. We'll go ahead and do just like that. So now you have nice and neat. And we're going to go ahead and tie that in on top of Palmer Schnell. Get that, fold that guy down. Go ahead and almost wish you had an extra set of hands when you're doing this. Alright, so we'll tie this in, one loose wrap, and another loose wrap, and we'll go ahead and just kind of mash this down a little bit, get everybody spread out evenly. You don't want these all rolling to one side. Put some tension on the thread, and there you go. So there's that. Go ahead and do another wrap. And another wrap. Just give some good tension on it. Let that sit off to the side. Make sure all your craft fur fibers are even here. Got some that kind of rolled around to the side here, so we'll go ahead and fix those guys real quick. Just like that. So we're good to go. Now I'm going to go through with my little nippers and trim this excess off. Be careful not to cut your hair or your Palmer Schnell here, or your thread or your Palmer Schnell, I should say. So there's your craft fur. So now I'm going to go through with my super glue again, and we're going to add a little bit right here just to make sure that stays. Okay, so now hold your Palmer Schnell back out of the way again. You're going to wrap forward with your thread to just behind the hook eye. And I'm going to go ahead and lock this in place with a half hitch. Okay, and now we're going to go through and we're going to go ahead and continue palmering the Schnell. So we're going to go through 1, 2, and you just keep palmering all the way forward. Again, remembering to keep your wraps nice and tight and dense. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and, oops. cut off our polymer Chanel. Throw that to the side for now. And we're going to go ahead and smooth these guys back. And give a few wraps right there behind the hook eye. And now we are back we're going to go ahead and do the same thing we did before with the gel super glue. We're going to go ahead and slick this stuff down and run our super glue right across the top right there. And we're just going to use our finger to kind of set that super glue. Okay, you can see how that's all kind of oriented down towards the bottom again. It doesn't need to be perfect, just needs to be mostly out of the way. Oops. And we're going to take another clump of craft fur. We're going to get a little bit more. Okay. And got another clump of craft fur here. We're going to do the exact same thing we did before. Just going to go through and get all that under fur out of there. So all that extra, just toss it. Again, we're going to get rid of these guard hairs. Pull those guys free. Get rid of that. This time, I'm not going to trim this off. We're actually going to hollow tie this in. So we're going to go ahead and place that like that. Oops. Some garbage down here. And we're going to go ahead and some tension on there. Make sure everybody is oriented correctly. Still on the top of the hook. More tension. There we go. Now I am going to go through and trim some of this out. And we'll go ahead and trim this to where it's kind of slicked back. That way it's kind of just a little clump there, and then we will go through and fold this back like so. And on this one, we're going to go ahead and give it that little kind of a bullet bump on there. Let's even that out. There we go. And I will a little farther behind the hook eye than I thought it was on this one. Okay, so go ahead and fold this back. Make sure everybody's clean. And on this one, give it that little bump right there. Just to get everybody facing back in the right direction. Again, we're going to go through and make sure everybody's where they need to be. Try to rotate on me a little bit. And we'll go through and give it some good wraps. Put some tension on it. And we'll just wrap right there. So there you go for that. There's the back side of your fly. Whip finish. Alright, so there is the back side of your fly. Go ahead and trim off this little excess garbage that's on here. We're going to go through and brush this back a little bit, kind of meld everybody together. And there you go. So, go ahead and I'm going to do a little bit of super glue right on the thread wraps, just to keep this all from slipping out. Craft fur is kind of a slick material. So let me go ahead and release this from the vise. There is the back portion to the fly. I don't know if you can. So it's got the little bit of flash down here, it's got the craft fur back, it's got the feathers for the tail, the hackle for the tail, and my hackle is not wanting to cooperate, but there you go. So that's the back of the fly. So we'll go ahead and set that off to the side. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to take our other size 2 Gamakatsu B10S, and we're going to go ahead and set it in the vise. So that's set. We'll go ahead and take our thread and start wrapping it in. This time, go ahead and trim off the excess. And what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this one a little bit farther down the bend of the hook. And I will show you why in just a second. We are going to take some articulation wire. This itself is not, this is just coated cable that you would get for like making bracelets or whatever from the craft store. This stuff works just fine. You don't have to buy actual articulation wire. So we're going to go ahead and put that up here. You notice I'm going to leave a little bit of extra on this side because it's going to fold back at the end. That actually helps lock it in place so you don't have to worry about it slipping free. And we will go ahead and start wrapping that in. If you've ever tied an articulated fly before, you know how this works. Go ahead and wrap. Wrap all the way up to there, and we'll start wrapping back again. And there you have it. So there's that. Next thing we need is some beads. These are just glass beads. You can buy specific articulation beads. These are just glass rigging beads. We're going to put 2 of them on here. You just slide them onto the wire. And just stick those on my material clip for a second. And I'm going to come back and grab our back end. All super glue is dried, so we're going to go ahead and slip the wire through the eye of this hook. And it's going to go back through the beads. I'm going to pull it fairly tight. You don't want to pull it all the way. You don't want to have your eye of your hook up inside your beads, but you want to have a little bit of open space just so your back hook has room to move or articulate. And make sure that the loop there, oops, it's wrapped over. There we go. Oops. My wire's crossed inside the beads, so let me fix that real quick. There we go. Okay, make sure my loop for my articulation is straight, and it is. You start wrapping back forward. Okay. We'll start wrapping back a little bit. And now you'll see we're going to go ahead and fold these guys back. And you want these folded back as tight as you can, because you want them to lay as flat as possible. Go ahead and wrap these. And we're going to take our cutters here and trim off the excess. And we're going to go ahead and wrap that flush down and over. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take our super glue. We're going to put some super glue on these wraps just to keep them from coming undone. This helps secure everything in place, keeps your wire, your articulation wire, from slipping on you. And we're good there. Go ahead. There we go. Next, we're going to go back to the Palmer Snell. I'm going to tie it in. we go. Okay. Head. And we'll set that off to the side. And we'll go into a couple good wraps in front here. Okay, set that to the side. Alright. Back to the super glue. Notice this is kind of repetitive here. Okay, good enough. I'm going to go back to the craft fur. If you wanted to keep this craft fur excess for dubbing, you could. I just don't. I don't need to, so that's cool. Stick it in my hand. And I'll trim that off. Tie it in. Couple loose wraps, and then put some tension on it. Wrap that down. There we go. And we will give it a couple more good tight wraps. Okay. And we'll go through and clean it up a little bit. Super glue. And we are back to the Palmer Chanel. And this time we're going to give it a little bit of extra space between the hook eye and where we stop the thread, because we've got to have room for the laser dub in there. Oops. Side. Go back to wrapping in the Palmer Chanel. There we go. And now you're done with the Palmer Chanel. Go ahead and do like we did before. We'll pull these back. Catch them with some wraps. And back to the super glue. Okay, there you go. And now we're back to the craft fur again. At this point, we're done with the craft fur as well. Set that aside. Take our clump of craft fur, get all that under fur out. Pull the guard hairs out, and just like before, we're going to go through and hollow tie in this little clump here. Loose wrap, Make sure everything's straight. And put some tension on it. Alright, so again, we're going to come in here, we're going to trim this. You notice this time I'm not going to trim as much back. I'm going to trim it smooth. But I'm not going to trim as much because you want this to be a little bit thicker and a little bit heavier section. I know this is kind of a long video, but I promise this flies faster to tie than this. I'm just really taking my time doing it. So we're going to fold this back. And this time, we are not going to create that little bullet bump at the front. We're going to go through and we're going to give it some good wraps right there. And we're just going to kind of leave it loose, because you'll see why in just a second. I'm going to give it a little bit of a thread dam here. And we're going to go through and we're going to comb this back. And you can, wet your fingers a little bit and just kind of slick that back a little bit. Now it's time for the laser dub, and we're going to go ahead and pull a generous clump out, not a ton. And you're going to want more than that. There we go. So a pretty generous clump of laser dub. You're going to sit here and you're going to pull this apart. And right now what we're doing is orienting these fibers a little bit. That's good enough. Now when you tie this thing in, this clump in, you want to tie it in at about the 30% point. So 30, 60-ish. It's not an exact science. So you're going to tie that just like that. And I'll spin my thread back to make sure it is twisting in the right direction. And we're going to go ahead and make sure that's wrapped in well. So we're good there. We're going to flip this guy over. And we're going to go for the white laser dub. And this time I'm going to go with a little bit less. I always want the top of the head to be bigger than the bottom. So there's your clump of white laser dub. Again, we're going to go through and pull these apart. We're going to go through and orient. Same thing, 30-ish, 60-ish. Get that pulled down into place, just like that. We're going to go through and give it a couple light wraps, then we're going to add tension. When you do that, make sure you hold your thread wraps when you're doing it, otherwise your dubbing tends to twist on you. And now we're going to go through and fold this back. Just use your fingers to kind of persuade it into the right direction. Flip this guy over and do the same thing on the top. And then We're going to go through in front and give some good dam wraps here. Now that that's kind of held back, we'll go through and whip finish. Helps to hold the dubbing back a little bit while you're doing this. And there we go. Point. Trim that off. And now you're going to go through and brush the dubbing back into craft fur. Go through and just kind of get everybody brushed out real good. Just give it a real good brushing. Alright, so big clumped mess, slicks back real nice though. So we got a real nice smooth transition between the dubbing and the craft fur. And that essentially is your finished fly. Now we're going to go through and add some eyes to this. We're going to go through and make your gel super glue, and you're going to work that in right there. And where did my eyes go? Where did I put my eyes at? Ah, there. Got too much stuff on my tying bench. Okay, so 10mm eye. Go through and set that. Make sure not to get your fingers in it in the glue. Make sure that's straight. And we're going to flip it over to the other side. Okay, we're going to make sure the eyes are even. Just kind of and we'll go through and we'll use my hackle pliers to kind of apply some pressure here. And that just allows it to apply pressure without getting my fingers in there. Alright guys, and there you go. That is that fly. You've got your two articulated sections. You've got your hackle back here with the flash. You've got your tail section, your head. Alright guys, really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope everything was clear and easy to understand. If you have any questions, just comment below. Thanks guys, have a great one.